Well, good afternoon, everyone. Senator Schumer's just arrived, so I'm going to introduce him to all of you, although he clearly needs no introduction. So as you know, Senator Schumer...
Wait.
Yep. Oh, you want to...
Shh. Bridget's seen me do that a bunch of times.
So thank you guys for a wonderful morning. We've learned a lot, we've thought about a lot, and we've had some great speakers. Now it's our privilege to hear from Senator Schumer. I know that you know the work he does in our state. There's no public servant who works harder than Senator Schumer. And that's saying a lot because there's some very hardworking members of Congress here with us at lunch right now. Senator Schumer has really taken his position as the majority leader in the Senate so seriously. And it's very hard to navigate in these very troubled waters of Washington. You have to be an expert listener, you have to be an excellent negotiator, you have to have a strategic vision, and you're constantly fighting back against another party that's trying to destroy you. And Senator Schumer has truly a character and a presence made of steel. He's not afraid to fight. He's not afraid to push back. He's not afraid to create a path to success. And because of Senator Schumer, we literally have never had a more successful Congress and more successful presidency than we had in the last 2 years. That is truly because of Senator Schumer's ability to bring people together, to find bipartisanship, to find common ground, and to navigate those very, very rough waters of politics here in Washington. We are blessed to have him as our senator. No senator has delivered more for our state than Senator Schumer, and I mean that truly. He's done more for our state than any senator in past times. Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, Senator Gillibrand. And first, New York is in the house. What a great turnout. And I want to say this. This is a tribute to Senator Gillibrand. To have so many distinguished members of the African-American faith community here, as we say in Brooklyn, schlepping all the way down to Washington, is a tribute to Senator Gillibrand's heart, her soul, and her mind. She's one of the fiercest allies that faith leaders could ask for. Year after year, she has been by my side as we have delivered for churches and communities of faith. And I thank her for everything she has done on behalf of New York faithful. I'm sure she's gotten many rounds of applause, but she deserves another one. And you know, when you're Senate Majority Leader with a caucus that runs from Bernie Sanders to Joe Manchin, it ain't easy. But when you have staunch allies who are always with you and help you get things done, really get things done, it means a lot. And I don't have a stauncher ally in the Senate than Senator Gillibrand. So thank you, Kirsten. I also want to acknowledge a lot of our New York delegation is here. We have a great House delegation. I see that Joe Morelli is here and Rochester is in the House. Grace Meng was here. Is Queens in the House? Adriano Espiat, Harlem and Manhattan are in the House. Any other of our... And Dan Goldman, Brooklyn and Manhattan are in the House. And I'm getting bad looks from the Buffalo delegation. Brian Higgins is in the House from Buffalo, New York. So that's great. Oh, my God. Westchester and... No more the Bronx, used to be. Still. Okay, Westchester and the Bronx are in the House. My dear friend, Jamal Bowman. And many other parts of our great state are in the House, too. So that is great. So first, I want to thank all of you, our great members of our clergy and our community, for what you do every day to make New York, America, a more righteous place. As I've said many times, our institutions of faith, our churches and our synagogues and our temples and our mosques are basically the cornerstone of the community. Without you, as I always have said, when the churches are strong, the community is strong. When our churches are weak, the community is weak. So all of us as elected officials want to strengthen our religious institutions and our churches above all. And I remember so much of what you did in so many ways. And then to so many of you who are my friends, I respect your counsel and your example of leadership, selfless leadership, dedicated to helping people and bringing the Word of God down to here on earth, inspires me. As a person of faith myself, you inspire me. And in some of my dark moments, you know, when you're worried about how are you going to get this done, how are you going to get that done, I think of many of you who I've known and seen do the work you have done. So it's great. And there's another reason I'm glad to be here. Sort of feels like home. Now, I'm deeply humbled and honored that the people of New York gave me another term, doing what I love to do, fighting for New York in the U.S. Senate. So many of you, we had over 300 pastors around the state in their non-church capacity sign letters of support for me. And I ended up with very little opposition, so that was because of you. They saw those letters, so I thank you for that. And you know what? It helped me be elected to my 5th term. I'm the only New Yorker who has ever served 5 terms. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to say one other thing, another exciting thing to happen, and that is, who am I joined by in leadership in the Congress? I'm the leader of the Senate Democrats. We have another Brooklynite in Hakeem Jeffries, who is the leader of the Democrats in the House. And not that I'm biased or anything. And no offense to all these other great places, I'm not surprised that House Democrats picked a Brooklynite as leader. As those of you who are from Brooklyn and even from New York, they say this about all of us. You learn certain things quickly. First, you learn persistence and serious mettle. You learn how to work. We are so diverse. And early on, when you're in school, you learn how to work with all different kinds of people and different backgrounds. You also, as many of you know and have done, you learn to stand your ground. You learn to take some things not personally, but just to move forward. And that's what Brooklyn has done, and that's what Hakeem Jeffries exemplifies. When I first met Nancy Pelosi, I was introduced to her, and the person who introduced me was George Miller, and now retired, but another congressman from California. He said, "You're going to meet this woman, and she's going to become the first woman speaker." And within a half hour of meeting her, I saw what he meant. I found the same thing with Hakeem when I first met him, even before he was assemblyman. You knew he was going to go places, and sure enough, he did. So I'm so glad. Hakeem and I have a lot of friends, a lot of friendship, and we go together all the time. Now, my brothers and sisters, we know how challenging the last few years have been for all of us. Together, we have found a way to pull through, and that's what I want to talk about today. First, the pandemic. It changed our world, changed our way of life. Who was the hardest hit? Our churches. Our churches. Because churches are more than a place of worship. They're a spiritual hearth of our neighborhoods. They're where people come together not only to pray, which is the #1 job you all have, but it's to grow, to learn, and to love one another as the Scripture commands us. Churches are the cornerstone of our communities, as I've said. When the churches had to close their doors because of COVID, it was devastating, devastating. And so many of you came over to me and said, "What are we going to do? No one's in church? That means no collection plates? We got a mortgage, we got rent, we got electricity, we got salaries." And so one of the first things, and I have to give some commendation, 2 people who helped lead me on this were Reverend Sharpton, who I know was here earlier today, and I don't know if Dr. Richardson is here, Franklin Richardson from Grace Baptist in Westchester, but he also came to me and explained this to me, and he said, for a big church like mine, maybe we can survive, but what about the smaller churches? And so we knew how devastating it was. And all the services you do, feeding the hungry, educating the kids, taking care of the seniors, Gone. So I knew that couldn't happen. And there was a load of opposition when I said, we're making churches eligible to the PPP program. And we're going to make it so it happens. And for the idle disaster loans. And so that allowed many of our churches, including some of you here, to get through those dark, dark times. But you did a lot of it yourself. When life was turned upside down, you got innovative, you got creative. How many of you 5 years ago had ever done a Zoom meeting? Now you all know how to do it. And it worked. And it's actually increased the size of congregations because people who can't come to church now know how to listen in on Zoom. You're not listening in, whatever you're doing on Zoom. Zooming in on Zoom. Okay. And so you did. And by the way, probably most of you have gotten video messages from me on regular occasions, and I appreciate so many of you showing it to your congregations. You know, on a given day, on a given Sunday, over 50,000 people see my little message in your churches. I only send it to you. So thank you. There's so many of you who show these so regularly, and if some of you are here who haven't gotten them, Josh Allbrooks, who's done a great job working for me along with Garrett Armwood. Josh is here. Raise your hand. Coming front and center, Josh. Well, not so front and center, but you go right there. Josh Allbrooks, please see him afterwards, and we'll make sure you're getting these, messages on different issues facing us and how you can mobilize the community, etc. We record them every week at the office and send them out. And we try to make as many as personal as possible, aimed at your specific church. And that's because whenever big things happen in Washington, and we've had 2 big years, as Kirsten has mentioned, and helped make happen, I want to make sure as many New Yorkers know about it as possible so that people don't just despair and say nothing good can happen. We got a lot of struggles, and we got a lot to overcome, but there's also some good things that have happened because of your work and our work together. So, for instance, let me give a couple of points about that. We passed the American Rescue Plan, as you know. It delivered $200 billion for New York. It kept all of our mass transit running. It kept our hospitals open. So many of our hospitals are ladders up for our constituents. A good-paying job in a hospital, doing good. They were going to close. They had no money because of COVID. They couldn't do all their regular activities. We did all of that. We helped our local governments. We helped everything where so many of your parishioners work. And as a result, I'm proud to say, Moynihan used to decry the fact that New York always sent more money to Washington than it got back. For the first time in the last 2 years, New York got more money back than we sent. It's good to have the majority leader from New York. First ever. Yep. Okay. And then here's some other things we did. We did the child tax credit for a year during the COVID time. Then the Republicans blocked it, but we got to get that back. It took nearly half our kids out of poverty. We got the initial checks to everybody, but then the checks for kids, for parents with kids, that extra $300 a month per kid, help lift people out of poverty. That's one of our leading agenda items, but we did it there. We made Juneteenth a federal holiday. I sent a video out on that. Thank God. We turned to you to push the president to cancel $15,000 in student debt. And when, praise God, he took action, it was churches in spreading the awareness so people could apply. I did a video on that so people could apply. And the list keeps going of what we got done. The first gun safety bill in 30 years. Buffalonians, where's the Buffalo tables? Here's some, and there's more. Because of the horrible tragedy at the Tops supermarket. Horrible, horrible. I had some relationship with that market because when a bad right-wing supermarket chain was going to take over Tops, I stopped it. And Mr. Nanula, the head of Tops, said, well, I'll do anything for you. He meant have a fundraiser or something. I said, do something else. East Buffalo, then called the East Side, now East Buffalo, was a food desert. The people were paying so much money. Open up a supermarket there, and that was the Tops. And then when I went up there, it just broke my heart. But the people of Buffalo came down and lobbied, and we passed the first major gun safety legislation in 30 years because of them, from the churches there. And here's one of the most important things that we have done, judges. Our federal judges, as we learned, have huge power, and they have lifetime appointments, one of the most powerful positions around. Before I became leader, the overwhelming majority of the judges in those previous 4 years and even before were white, male, partners in fancy law firms. The bench didn't look like America. It was one of my missions and one of the things I'm proudest of, to change that. And that's what we did. So listen to this. First, we've set a record this year. We appointed 97 new lifetime federal judges, more than in the Trump 42 years. More. 3/4 have been women. 2/3 have been people of color. I have appointed more African Americans to the bench than anybody, and I'm proud of that. But we're also not just having demographic diversity, we are having professional diversity. So it's not just partners in fancy law firms or prosecutors. We have legal aid attorneys. Okay, Eunice Lee, the only African American now on the Second Circuit, our big appeals court, was a public defender. Right. Myrna Perez, daughter of Mexican immigrants, is the only Latina on that Second Circuit, because the previous one I got promoted. I recommended to President Obama that he put Sonia Sotomayor on the court, and he did. But so this is great news, and this is going to affect our people for decades to come. And what did it culminate in? Appointing the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court and the first public defender on the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson. So that was great. She's brilliant. I called her the 3 Bs. Brilliant, beloved, and belongs. She belongs on the Supreme Court. And by the way, I did the same thing with U.S. attorneys, which I have the power to appoint. We have 4 U.S. attorneys. They're the prosecutors from the federal level, but when there are things that go out of line with local law enforcement, they're the ones who oversee it. For the first time ever, we have, of the 4, 3 are African American. Damian Williams in the Southern District, Breon Peace in the Eastern District, and Trini Ross in the Western District. I'm really proud of that, and they are great. There's something else that we just passed that your churches should be aware of. It's called the Nonprofit Security Grant. If you need protection from violence or burglary, these grants will pay not for personnel, although I'll get to that in a minute, but for all kinds of protections, for cameras, for doors, for fences, all the kinds of things you might need to protect your church. Or it also would apply to a school your church is affiliated with, a senior citizen, housing, whatever. And even from people, even though you can't hire a person yourself, you can hire a security company that will guard and watch your church. We just increased that by another $65 million, and Josh, and I'm sure Kirsten's staff as well, will show you how to apply. There's a lot of money. Over a third of it went to New York last time. Okay? So that's another way we can help. So here are a few more things we did. We got Pell Grants raised by $500. In the last bill, which I just sent out a video on, in the last bill, which just passed in December, so it hasn't gotten that much chance to get around because of Christmas and the New Year, we increased Pell Grants to the highest level in a decade, $5,000. We had more money for schools like SUNY and CUNY, and a passion of mine, and we've done this over the past years, much more money than our HBCUs have ever gotten, which is very important. So these are all good things. And so that's the progress, some of the progress we've made. We've done a lot of good things. But we all know, we all learned from the scriptures, from Dr. King and everything else, that the road to justice is long, and we can never, ever give up. So to that end, my office is available. I mentioned Josh, but on any issue you have, nothing's too big for us, but nothing's too small. Please call us. Our job is to help you. Our salaries are paid by your your parishioners, your congregants' tax dollars. So they're entitled to call, and they should. And we will help you in any way you can. And as I mentioned, anyone who wants to get into our little video program, let us know, and we'll send you those. People love it, and they keep watching. So let me say two things in conclusion. First, all the things we achieved weren't easy. They were not easy. But we have to persist. We all know the lesson of Dr. King. The march to freedom is long and it is winding. When he faced adversity, he never gave up. So we're going to keep fighting for our faith communities, for average Americans, for immigrants, for poor people. And I want to conclude by telling you a little story. Some of you have heard this. What makes me believe that we can succeed, makes me believe what the prophet Amos had said, which was one of Dr. King's favorite lines, and that is, let justice run down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. My dad passed away a year ago in November. I'm going to truncate the story some. My grandpa was a union organizer up in Utica, New York. We have anyone here from Oneida County? Maybe not. And anyway, my father enlisted right after World War II started. They taught him radar. They gave him top secret clearance. And one of the missions of radar was to see mountains, because the Allies were flying over the Himalaya mountains, and the planes would crash into the mountains, which were enshrouded in clouds. My father was taught radar in the early days. He flew 20 missions over the mountains, helped perfect it, was chased by a lot of Japanese fighter planes, Japanese Zeros. They chased the planes, and they couldn't see the mountains because they were enshrouded in clouds, but radar taught him to do it. He was shot at by all these Japanese Zeros, never hit. The only injury he got a parasite in the Burma airfield and lost his hair. When I became a congressman, he said, now that you're a congressman, can I get my Purple Heart? I said, it's not for parasites, Dad. Anyway, World War II ends. Grandpa lost his job as a union organizer, and he buys a little exterminating business in Brooklyn from a guy who was leaving New York. My grandpa was an idealist. He wasn't a businessman. He'd go into people's houses and he'd say, you're poor, I see, you shouldn't have rats or roaches, pay me when you can. He told the 3 workers in the business he bought how to form a union and ask them for more money. So when the family got back, my dad is starving. He has to go into this junky little business, and for 45 years he struggled in it, first supporting his parents and brothers, and then supporting us. My dad never complained. My dad never even resented people who were given a better break than him, because he was a smart guy. Had he gone to college, he might have done something. But for those of you who have lost parents and are close to them still, my dad is still with me. He's next to me. He's right here. And he taught me 2 values above all. First, always help people who need help. And the more dire the straits they're in, the more you should help them. And second, he said, if you're undertaking something important in your professional life, in your personal life, in your religious life, whatever, look in your heart and make sure you're doing the right thing. And once you're sure, persist and persist and persist, and God will reward you. You will succeed. That has motivated me, it inspires me, and it will mean that our relationship has been a great relationship and will continue as long as I am senator, and we will persist to make America a more perfect nation. Thank you, everybody. Great to see all of you. Thank you, everybody.
So for the other congressional members, I welcome you up here to speak. The most senior among them is Brian. Do you want to say a few words? And then Adriano, then Joe, then Jamal, then Dan.
Thank you very much, everybody. I just want to recognize some of our faith leaders from Buffalo, Reverend Mark Blue, who is also the president of the Buffalo chapter of the NAACP. Jeffrey Chambliss, pastor at Moriah Missionary Baptist Church. Betty Pierce Williams, assistant pastor at Elam Christian Fellowship. Jonathan Staples, senior pastor at First Shiloh Baptist Church. Craig Pridgeon, pastor of True Bethel Church in Buffalo and Niagara Falls. Don Nichols, church administrator at Lincoln Memorial United Methodist Church. George Nicholas, senior pastor at Lincoln Memorial United Methodist Church. And Kelly Diane Galloway, elder at Ramp Church International. Also, we have Bishop Pastor Darius Pridgeon. Darius Pridgeon is the pastor at True Bethel, the True House of God in Buffalo, and for the past 12 years has served as a member of the Buffalo Common Council and its president. He announced yesterday that he's not going to seek re-election. I remember I was at his swearing-in ceremony, and this media person was very aggressive with the pastor, and he said, you know, Pastor, how are you going to serve two masters, your public role as a member of the Buffalo City Council and your congregation? Pastor Pridgeon pointed to the sky and he said, I only serve one master. Darius Pridgeon, thank you for your extraordinary service to our city and for the service you will continue to provide to our community as an extraordinary faith leader. We are indebted to you, and we are enriched and ennobled to be in your service. Thank you, sir. Let me just say very, very quickly, 247 years ago, America declared its independence. And we advanced our secular prayer that said we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and not the promise of happiness, but the unfettered, the unshackled pursuit of it. The guy that wrote those words owned people at the time. 158 years ago, the Civil War had ended, but not for everybody. 60 years ago, a young preacher, Martin Luther King, came to the nation's capital, right in front of you, right behind you, and in front of me, and revealed his dream to the nation that one day his 4 little children will grow up in a nation where they will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. 1 year ago, in Buffalo, New York, on May 14, 2022, a white supremacist drove 200 miles to Buffalo and shot up a store that was predominantly African American and killed 10 of our students. What I realized then, and Pastor Pridgeon was a leading figure in that, is the importance of the faith community and the public community, the government community coming together. We learn great lessons. You know, the Greek tragic poets say that we suffer our way to wisdom. We suffer our way to wisdom. To live is to suffer. To endure the suffering is to give the suffering meaning. Thank you for everything that you do, and God bless the work that you do on behalf of all of us.
Thank you, Brian. I now would like to invite Adriano Espaillat up. Is he still here? Adriano, are you here? No. Then let me invite Joe Morelli up, and then Jamal, and then Dan. So don't leave.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be here, and I want to thank my good friend Senator Gillibrand for organizing this and really for inviting my House members, colleagues who are here. Senator Gillibrand is involved in so many different issues, and we partner on a whole host of those issues, and I'm just really grateful for her leadership, her friendship, and for the invitation to spend a few minutes with you. And I want to ask my colleagues from Rochester. Can you stand for just a minute? I want everyone to see Rochester's in the house in a big way, and we're so grateful for them. And I have the great privilege of working with many of them on projects near and dear to us. I want to thank you because my experiences over the years, no matter where I go in New York, and prior to coming to Congress, I was the majority leader of the New York State Assembly. So I've been through so much of the state of New York. And I observed this about our faith leaders, that you truly embody what it means to be servant leaders. That's what we're all about, what we in Washington, what we in elected life should be, but you are. And it's one of the great things to observe servant leaders. You know, in America today, humility, particularly for those in public life, is a lost art. It's like a characteristic. But the people who represent our communities and the church community continue to exemplify that. And it's something I'm so grateful for. And it reminds me that as you're doing the Lord's work in your congregations each and every day, that you know far better about the ways to serve people sometimes than we do in our state capitals and here in Washington. And it's great to have an opportunity to be with all of you, but to learn and to listen and gain your insights on how we work together to really solve challenging problems. And it's difficult. You know, one of my favorite passages from Mark is Mark 3:25. If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, the house will not stand. And I think so much about that because so much of what happens in Washington feels like a house divided. Now, I don't think it's any secret, the people here who are with you, we're all Democrats. We're struggling to make sure that the people in our communities have access to job opportunities, have access to all the freedoms, voting rights, and to make sure that we stop people trying to suppress the votes. One of the things that Hakeem Jeffries did for me last week is to ask me to serve as the leading Democrat on the House Administration Committee. We have responsibility for voting rights in this committee. We're going to work around the country for the next 2 years to continue to make sure that we're doing everything we can to promote the right to the ballot, because there is really, it's hard to imagine a more fundamental right than the right to vote. There is no real breathing life into the Constitution if people don't have access to the ballot. Constitution, if people don't have the right to the franchise to vote, isn't worth more than the parchment that it is printed on. So we're going to continue to work, and I know all my colleagues are with us as we do that. But we have to learn how to repair the country, how to make sure it does not remain a house divided, make sure that we work on the cycle of violence and multi-generational poverty in too many communities. So it means addressing the truth that so much of what we need to do to help people, particularly in areas of poverty in black and brown communities, is to look at the systems that have not served us well. And frankly, I don't have all the answers, but I do know this, working with many people in my community, that they're rebuilding systems. Not just about programs, it's tying people together, bringing people together, and making sure we solve ways that are comprehensive to uplift people. And, you know, I'll tell you, and I'm sure many of my colleagues will agree, what I'm really tired of in America, I'm tired of when people talk about programs that uplift people as though they're charities, that somehow these aren't investments in the future generations of Americans, far too many of whom have been left behind. This isn't about handouts. It's about hands up. It's about elevating people. It's about lifting people. It's allowing people to fulfill all of their dreams, to fulfill their potential. We need to act in government as the Samaritan on the road to Jericho, not to look down on people, but to uplift people. So I want to reiterate my commitment. Again, Senator Gillibrand, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for facilitating the important work being done here today. We need to take this back home to our communities and continue to work with you, to listen to you, to learn from you, and to elevate every single community in New York and across the nation. And really appreciate all you do. So thank you again, Senator. Thank all of you. God bless you.
I now would like to invite up Jamal Bowman. Congressman, are you here? Yes, he is.
Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing? It's really good to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you so much for schlepping down to Washington, D.C. Good to be with you. Good to see you all. Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, for bringing us together. Thank you for your incredible leadership in New York State. I am so excited to work in partnership with you. We have so much amazing work to do. I'm just excited to go forward. Before I continue, I would like all of the clergy representing New York 16 to please stand up so you can be acknowledged. That's the Bronx, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, up to White Plains, and everyone else in between. Can we give a round of applause to the clergy representing New York 16? I think New York 16 we probably got the most clergy in the house. I don't know. I saw Rochester look pretty deep as well. I don't know. I said that on purpose. I want to start conflict. I want to start some drama. So I said that on purpose. Well, thank you, New York 16. It's great to be with you all. I also have to acknowledge someone special. So I had never run for office in my life. I was in education for 20 years. Any educators in the house? Any teachers in the house? Educate? That's what I'm talking about. Started teaching in the South Bronx in 1999. Did that for 5 or 6 years before becoming a dean of students for 3 years before opening my own middle school and running that middle school as a principal for 10 and a half years. I had this crazy idea that I wanted to run not just for any office, not school board, not city council, not state house. I'm running for Congress. Crazy idea, shared it with some family and friends, and someone said to me, I got a brother, reverend, pastor, leader, visionary that you need to speak to. And that person is here today, and I want to acknowledge him. That is Reverend Jacques DeGraff. Reverend DeGraff, can you please stand up? So Reverend and I went to Sylvia's. We had some catfish and grits and eggs, and we chopped it up for about 2 hours. And I never teased him about this before, but we were there for about 2.5 hours. He spoke for 2 hours and 15 minutes. And as reverends tend to do from time to time. And I listened for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I took his counsel, and I said, Reverend, I need you to help me put together a brain trust of elders because I'm a younger guy. I'm not young. I'm about to be 47, and you know in your 40s you start to feel all that. So I'm not young, but I'm younger. I said, Reverend, I need you to put together a brain trust of elders to continue to guide me and support me and help me just navigate this universe. And he did it immediately. And one of those incredible leaders that I was able to meet, I want to acknowledge her as well. She has been doing transformational work in the public health sector for several decades, decades and decades and decades. I don't know if it started with the HIV epidemic. She's probably doing it before that. But this person is one of the leading voices and organizers and public health officials doing HIV/AIDS work. And then she's still doing COVID work for our communities as well. So Deborah Frazier Howes, please stand up. Got to show you some love as well. As we know, black women lead. Black women lead. I am also very proud to be one of the only congressional offices where I have a black woman as my chief of staff. And that was mandatory for me, by the way. No offense to anyone else. But I was raised by a single black woman, my mother, Pauline Bowman. And whenever I need the best counsel, the best advice, the best guidance, I get on my knees and pray to God first and foremost. Then the next thing I do is I turn to the closest black woman. So I made sure to hire this brilliant, amazing sister recording me, making these remarks right now, right here in the middle of everyone, Sarah Idrisu. Please give her a round of applause. How many black women are chiefs of staffs? And she's from the motherland. She's Eritrean. So not to put your business out there, but she's also from the motherland. So I want to close by saying this. It is essentially important, as you all know, for us to work in collaboration and as community to do the grassroots organizing necessary to help our congregations, our constituents, our families, and our communities. No single pastor, no single public health official, no single senator or member of Congress can do it alone. We have to work together in collaboration across clergy, across churches. We got to work with our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and those who represent multiple denominations. We need for our faith leaders to work with the Department of Education, public health officials, other elected officials to provide a holistic wraparound mission and vision for our communities. Because we are in a historic time in American history. We all know that. Historic because of the president we are trying to get as far away from as possible. Historic because the first pandemic in 100 years. Historic because the first attack on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812. And historic because Jamal Bowman is the first black man in U.S. history to serve in New York 16. And we have so many firsts in Congress right now. First women of color, first people of color, first LGBTQ. This is a historic moment. And there are many, mostly in the Republican Party, who are trying to take us back. Make America great again when there was segregation and women ain't had the right to choose and inequality was horrible. Let's keep taking us back to a place where people have fought and died to get away from. People like John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, and so many others. But collectively, our collective vision, our collective mission is going to help us to evolve into the America that we can be. Do you believe in that mission? Do you believe in that mission? If you don't believe in that mission and vision, then you would not be in this room. Because we're not just here to hobnob and take pictures and have good lunch in Washington. We in Washington. This is the power structure of the entire world. It's on us to make powerful decisions together to transform our country, but also the human race. And I'm just humbled and excited to be in that fight with you. So God bless you. Thank you so much. Senator Gillibrand, we're going to change the world. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Be well, be safe.
Okay, because we are ecumenical and we have all of the Abraham religions represented, Dan Goldman.
Thank you. Very hard to follow, Jamal. That was outstanding. Exactly. Before I move on, I want, since I think I am the only representative from both Manhattan and Brooklyn here, let's have everybody from Manhattan and Brooklyn stand up. All right. See, Jamal, I told you I could outdo you. I want to specifically acknowledge Reverend Akers, Reverend Bernard, and Reverend Lacey Bethany for joining us. Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, for bringing us all together and for hosting this here today. My faith, my Jewish faith, like many in this room, has inspired my lifelong commitment to public service and to my recent journey to the halls of Congress here. The value of tikkun olam, which is the Jewish commitment to living a life of service to one's neighbors and giving back to the community, has been a long driver for me in making sure that we are always putting, first and foremost, centering those who have not had the opportunities that everybody in this country deserves. I started my work in this area in college. I wrote my senior thesis on the Jewish involvement in the civil rights movement. When I was then in law school, I immersed myself in the criminal justice reform movement. I was a research assistant for Michelle Alexander, who many of you will know, who wrote the book The New Jim Crow, which I contributed to, which is truly the seminal book on discrimination in our criminal justice system. What I feel, as many of you feel, is that we have a lot of work to do still to fight injustice, to lift up our communities, to make sure that our rights are equal, our access to the ballot is equal, and that those communities that have traditionally been underserved and underrepresented are getting the services and opportunities that we all need. I'm honored to be here with all of you who have demonstrated as well in your own daily lives your commitment to your congregations, to your communities, to serving others, which is how together all of us are going to protect and strengthen our democracy and make sure that we enable everybody to pursue the American dream, which is what made this country so special. So, Senator Gillibrand, thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming down here, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you and working together to lift up our mutual communities. Thank you.